And now, ladies and gentlemen, back to our Visionary Forum. I would like to introduce you to our next keynote speaker. We're delighted to have Mr. Raymond Janse van Rensburg, Vice President, System Engineering from APJC from Cisco. He'll be sharing with us on the topic of the future protege, cybersecurity in 2025. So taking us 2 years ahead. Let's welcome Raymond on stage.
Thank you. So, good morning, everyone. It is great to be here at the Digital Economy Summit, and it's great to be back in this wonderful city of Hong Kong. I'd like to start off by just saying hi to all of our virtual attendees as well. And today, it doesn't matter if you are physically in the room or if you're attending virtually, there's something that we all have in common. All of us are in the business of building the future. And driving sustainable urban transformation for the cities of the future is one of the building blocks to build a smarter and more sustainable future for everyone. Every major city out there is looking at how they can embrace technology to drive digital transformation within their environment. And they do that to connect, to secure, and to enhance the experience of the citizens or the constituents that they serve. Delivering on this transformation will solve one of the basic social challenges that we face across many of those cities. And that include looking at how do we build infrastructure for schools and universities so that learning will never stop. It focuses on how do we develop transport systems, smart intersections, so that we can eliminate congestion, and in doing so, prepare for a self-driving future. It also focuses on how we securely connect critical infrastructure, power systems, water systems, as well as gas and many others. And it extends to connecting to healthcare. It also focuses on connecting to digital citizen services. All of those coming together and bridging the capability. But if we look at the advances in technology, we're truly at an inflection point. We're at a stage in our lives where we need to come together and figure out how do we take that forward. Now at Cisco, we know what it's like to be at that crossroads. And that's why our purpose is to drive and to power an inclusive future for all. Powered by technology, built with sustainable and secure capability, and empowering access for everyone. Sustainability is a fundamental building block for urban transformation. And hence the focus on driving that and delivering on the capability. Now, Cisco recognized with technology and the advances in technology, we can continue to deliver on that sustainability element. And that's why our commitment to deliver on net zero is in 2040. Now, let's bring that back closer to sustainable urban transformation. There's a whole host of different citizen services that we can deliver, bringing innovation to life. But an important aspect that we've got to keep in mind is we talk about digital. Whatever is connected must be protected. And for that reason, the foundation building block for any smart city or smart development is focused on providing a secure, resilient infrastructure. Why secure? Because we need to protect the citizens and everything else that we connect to that smart infrastructure, we need to protect that from cyber threats and cyber criminals. Why resilient? Because now suddenly we're running power, gas, transport, roadways, healthcare, everything else on a digital platform. And there's no option for downtime. We've got to have a resilient infrastructure. So the focus here is to look at developing that secure, resilient infrastructure. And on top of it, then we can layer things like public Wi-Fi, providing equitable access to everyone, doesn't matter where you live and what you do. Focusing on smart transport, smart lighting, smart water, and all the other smart services that's out there. But at the same time, keep in mind that through the pandemic, all of us experienced how our lives changed. We lived, we worked, and we played in a different way. And as a smart city, we need the ability to translate that capability into the services that we offer, so that in the event that we face a disruption, we can seamlessly move the economy and the services to hybrid or to remote to support all of that. Now, this is big picture, painting all the services and the capabilities that's out there. And if we look at the Hong Kong Smart City Blueprint that's recently been updated, a lot of those are captured there already. So it's not new news. But sometimes it's important to take a step back and see the wood from the trees or the trees from the forest and look at what's other opportunities that we control, each and every one of us individually, that can influence, impact, and drive an outcome from a urban development perspective or a sustainable urban development perspective. And for that reason, we need to spend some time looking at how technology can scale progress. There's lots of different areas, and these are typically areas that is in our control. It's in your control. You run a business that you operate. You've got an opportunity to look at how do you empower and change that environment to a smart business providing smart workspaces. A lot of you in your building will have a data center, and you've got a responsibility to look at that and say, how do we treat it differently and provide capabilities? And the same is true for the Internet of the future. And if we look at that in a little bit detail, from a sustainability perspective and data centers, we've got to look at that as an urgent issue. If you look at the numbers, a fairly large data center somewhere in the world has got the potential to consume the same amount of energy as 50,000 homes. At 200 terawatt globally, it's consuming more energy than some fairly significant nation states, and that's growing on a continuous basis. Now, it's important for us to recognize that advances in technology provides us with a capability to look at technologies like cloud, advances in server architecture and silicon, as well as data center switching that will reduce the energy consumption within that environment significantly. Not only does it reduce the energy consumption, but it reduces the floor space or the rack space that need to be consumed as well. And that's something that's in our control. So yes, we talk about the big transformation, but let's also focus on the smaller things that we can change collectively. The same holds true for the others. An important one here is around the industry and the ecosystem. It's important to note that none of this happen in isolation. There's always a significant engagement from government to local council, public-private partnerships, private companies and individuals to look at how do we develop these things together. A lot of it might not be done yet in the way that you wanted, and that's essentially an opportunity where we can look at the incubation that's been driven in Hong Kong and looking at that industry solution development that might be related to healthcare or education, financial services or retail. But if we expand that and we just look at smart buildings, then it's a very different conversation. I sat on a plane flying into Hong Kong yesterday, and you could see the skyline and each one of the buildings etched out. High rise, low rise, a whole mix of them. And if you think about it, each one of those buildings can be a living organism, where it's got the capability to make decisions based on environmental changes that affect the building, but also may affect the environment that it engages with. A living organism that constantly collects data and share that data so that we can analyze it and derive insights, and with that insights automate some actions. And that might be around how to change the workspace, how to move people around the building, or just focus on environmentals, heating, cooling, air quality, lighting, and anything else that's related to that. So essentially moving to an environment where it becomes a programmable being, something that we can engage with, something that we can automate and control at scale. So what makes a building smart? 3 key building blocks: sustainability, convergence, and workspace. If we look at sustainability, it is driving of energy efficiency, and also looking at how we can remove carbon and develop and design a low carbon environment. But I want to challenge that and say it goes beyond that as well. It's looking at sustainability and the advances in technology and see how we can drive change. And we'll talk a little bit about that using an example of Universal Power over Ethernet Plus and some of the advances that we can bring with that. On the convergence side, in smart buildings today, we've already converged a lot of the building management systems with the IP network, and everything can be addressed through IP. That's great, but think about it from a power perspective. We still run a data network and we run a power network. So we've got separate cable plants for AC as well as data. Significant amount of embodied carbon that we put into every one of those buildings that you see in the distance as you fly into the city. And there's an opportunity from a sustainability perspective in the design, but also an opportunity as we look at the power efficiency that we derive. And then finally on workspaces, is using technology to create an environment where we can have a flexible floor plan, where we can change things on the fly, where we can empower employees and give them the capability to be effective in what they do. So let's spend a little bit of time just talking about an opportunity around universal power over Ethernet. Think about it in the office. If I go in today, I will carry my laptop, maybe a tablet, a smartphone, a wearable, and some other stuff. I might have a screen on my table. But each and every one of those devices are DC powered. But yet, there's a whole range of power sockets at my desk, and I plug in a power converter or power supply to power my phone. Every one of those we see efficiency lost or a loss in power conversion of 20%. Now extrapolate that across a campus or the home or any other environment and think about the loss that we generate just with power conversion that we do in every one of those instances. With universal power over Ethernet, we can run an Ethernet cable to a desk. On the desk, we can split that out and power 11 devices, depending on what they are. In some cases, if you power a flat screen monitor, it might consume 90 watts, so it'll only be one. But if we, for example, think about powering lights in this auditorium, we can power 11 LED lights from one single power over the Ethernet port, 11 of them. And each one of those lights will illuminate more lumens than a 100-watt LED light. that brings about a significant opportunity for us because we can reduce not just the power consumption, but we can also reduce the embedded carbons or embodied carbons in the wiring that we need to drive, as well as the cost associated with that. So what would it look like in this environment? It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to take AC out completely. There's still some stuff that need a AC port. But if you look at a typical desk, you only need a single Power over Ethernet cable. And if you look at a smart desk, that desk will automatically distribute the power, and you can plug in your laptop, your phone. It can be height adjusted, and the motor is running from it. And for each one of those, we reduce that power consumption loss by 20%, but we also reduce the cost of wiring to provide AC to each of every desk with 3 or 4 or 5 ports, depending on what your standard is. And if we look at that ratio, talking about 1 to 10, 1 to 11 devices that you can power through one single port. Taking a 48-port switch, there's quite a lot of stuff that you can power then in the office by using one of those. And for me, this is seeing the wood from the trees. Yes, we've got to do all the other smart city things, but there's elements that is in our control where we can drive a sustainable and a smarter future for everyone out there. And it's available for us to do, make that change within the environment. Now, we talked about sustainability, we talked about convergence. Let's talk about the workspace very briefly. Essentially, if we go back 2 years, none of us would have thought that going to work would change forever. And today we essentially flipped that coin, and a lot of people are going to the office. But it's creating that magnet to get people to actually get into the office. Creating an environment where it's safe for employees to move around, where we can do people counting and make sure that we don't oversubscribe specific floor areas or meeting rooms, where we can manage the environmentals around air quality, because that is a key focus for us around providing a safe and secure and productive workspace for our employees. Now, all of that capability exists today. If you look at the access points, they can measure temperature, humidity, air quality, all the way to our video conferencing devices, but then bringing it back into a cloud-based solution where you can actually get a smart sense of the spaces working around you, and through that, visualize what it looks like. As an employee coming into the office, as I walk through the foyer, I can immediately see which offices and meeting rooms are available for use and which are occupied, and that's updated dynamically based on the telemetry that we get from the different endpoints in the network. But it also gives us visibility into what is the temperature, humidity, air quality. It'll give you a view on footfall. Now, this is applicable in a normal office environment, but it's as applicable in a retail setting, because now suddenly it gives you a view of how customers are moving through the retail establishment, where you've got issues with no footfall and where you need to drive up footfall. All of this looking at a large amount of data that's being gathered from this living organism, analyzing the data, developing the insights, providing that insights, and if required, driving large-scale automation to align to the outcomes that we want to deliver. So if we look at how we bring all of this together, it is focused around delivering a smarter and a more sustainable future for everyone. But at the same time, it's embedded in that user experience, the workplace experience, providing a safe space for people to come to the office. And while we do that, we said that everything that is connected needs to be protected. So security and cybersecurity becomes a fundamental tenet of the overall conversation as we move forward. If we reflect on the conversation, a lot of it is grounded in our purpose, powering a more inclusive future for all. And this is not just a rallying cry, it's not just a statement, but it truly calls out that all of us, each and every one of us in this room, need to be collectively working at driving this outcome. This is not the government, it's not a local council, it's not a particular organization, it's not an individual. We all need to come together and focus on how do we drive a more sustainable and a smarter urban transformation for everyone out there. Thank you.